Hey guys, hope you had a good weekend. So, I'm here with a session on Lightning Web Components. So, as we all are aware, Lightning Web Components is a new buzzword in the market. Salesforce is pushing us to use Lightning Web Components, why it is better, why it is good than Lightning Aura, what all differences we have between Aura and Lightning. So, all these things we are going to discuss today. Then we'll talk about in terms of a developer as well as in terms of an architect and in terms of a practice head. Like in terms of developer, should we go for Aura? Should we go for Lightning Web Components? Or is this the good time to learn Lightning Web Components? As terms of architect, what are the risks associated with Lightning Web Components? When to use Aura? When to use Lightning Web Components? So there are a lot of questions that an architect has to take care of. Then, in terms of a practice head, so in terms of practice head, he has to decide like when we are having freshers are joining our company. So, should we train them in Classic or should we train them in Lightning? And then, if we are training them in Lightning for programmatic component developments, should we train them in Aura or should we train them in Lightning Web Components? So there are a lot of questions around it. So I'll try to answer all these questions today in this session. So let's go ahead and see what all I have for today's session. So in today's session, I'll be covering these 9 points. So starting with why LWC, differences between Aura and LWC, then supported Salesforce experiences, unsupported experiences, how we bind data. So we'll be talking about then I'll be demoing you how you can bind data within components and between different components. Then the difference between Aura expression and JavaScript getters that we use in Lightning Web Components. And at the end, I'll be demoing you how to use getters. So let's get started. Why LWC? A big question. A big question for everybody. A big question for an architect or a practice head or a developer. So starting with Lightning Web Components uses core web component standards and provides only what's necessary to perform well in browser supported by Salesforce. So this is something good. Lightning Web Components uses core web component standards, which means like they are following standard web components. So any library, so as you are aware, most of the front-end libraries are based on web component standards. So if Lightning Web Components is also similar, so if you talk in terms of a practice head, for them it is now easy to get a front-end developer and ask him to start working on Lightning Web Components, as any if that front-end developer has worked on any of the libraries which is based on web component standards, so it will be easy for him to start up with Lightning Web Components. So now it is easy to find a resource. In terms of Aura, it was a tough call as it was totally different. So either we cross train different resources like front end resources in Aura, or we used to train our Salesforce resources into Aura. So it was a tough call for a practice lead how to maintain the trainings. Whereas in this case, we can reuse the knowledge of a front end developer who has worked on any of the libraries which are based on web component standards. It will be easy for him to pick up Lightning Web Components. Going ahead, it's built on code that runs natively in browser. So Lightning Web Components is lightweighted and delivers exceptional performance. So this is the most important point why we should move to Lightning Web Components. As Lightning Web Components only, like when you write a Lightning Web Component, it only has whatever is required, it doesn't brings everything. Whereas Aura was a heavy weighted library. So the performance was low, although we used to call it lightning, but it was not lightning fast. As compared to that, LWC is pretty fast. So I'll share one experience. I was sitting in one of the sessions that was being delivered by one of the Salesforce managers. So if you know if you have seen lightning experience, so the header which comes, so they were telling like earlier it was built in Aura. So when we used to load that, In the regression test, they figured out, okay, that takes somewhere 300 milliseconds. Whereas now they have migrated that header into Lightning Web Component, and now it takes somewhere 50 milliseconds to load. So that is a pretty good difference, and we are getting a better performance. So wherever like you are feeling your performance is low, your component is not performing that much, or it's taking a lot of time to load, it's time for you to move to Lightning Web Components. And the best part, Lightning Web Components and Aura components can coexist and interoperate on a page. So wherever Lightning Web Components can work independently, it is well and good. As we know, it has recently came in. There are a lot of features they are still building, they are still in their roadmap. So if somewhere our Lightning Web Components cannot perform independently, they can be wrapped into an Aura component, and then it can be used. We'll go ahead and see, like in the next slide, we'll see how which all Salesforce experiences and tools are supported and which are not. So I'll tell you where to figure out how to use it. Then base Lightning components are available as Aura components and as well as Lightning Web components. So if you are a developer, you might be having a question. Salesforce, like if you look at their component library, there are a lot of Aura components, base components that you have used in your components. So what about LWC? So you'll be happy to know, like whenever you go to your component library, there you can switch if you want a LWC component or you want a Aura component, and now they have built both the libraries. So you have most of the standard components available in LWC also, and all the base components that you are using in your Aura components. So internally, Salesforce is migrating all of them into LWC. That you might not be able to figure it out now because it looks same, the usage is same in the Aura component. But as we know, Salesforce is migrating things. So like recently I was working on one of the projects, and I was debugging my one of the component. I was just working on developer console of my Chrome, and I loaded my page. Although I was not having any Lightning Web component in that page, still I can see a lot of LWC errors in my console log. So that means somewhere LWC is getting used. So a lot of the places, and when I see only my component, my particular component was loading at that time, it was throwing a lot of errors related to formatted number and all. So all the base components, they are trying to migrate it to Lightning Web components. For now it is not stable that much, but going ahead in future it will be stable, and it is the future. So we should start thinking of migrating to Lightning Web components, and it is pretty good. It is based on web components standards, so it is similar to other libraries. I guess this answers you. Like if you talk in terms of practice here, then why LWC? So why LWC? Because it improves your performance, your clients will be happy. Then how to manage your resources. So if your resources are now working in Aura, it is not that tough to get them trained in LWC. It is pretty quick. And if they start using LWC, your performances, like your component performance, will increase. So at the end, it will improve your customers and all. So you should start focusing on migrating your, like getting your resources trained in LWC, which is important right now. Okay. Then in terms of architect, so I was talking to one of the Salesforce architects. He was like, should we go to LWC or not? Do we have to inform our client? So yes, you need to inform your client, because your resources that are working on Lightning Web Aura components, they need to be trained in Lightning Web components. As they will be recently trained, they might not be having all the knowledge, or they might not work that much efficiently. So there will be an impact on the effort which they are putting in for creating Lightning Web components. And as like Lightning Web Components is still not stable, so there might be an issue or something that they figure out, okay, we are blocked here, so now we have to move to Aura. So there can be these kind of chances, so you have to raise an alarm to your customers. Okay, we are moving to Lightning Web Components, we are trying to adopt that, but there can be a blocker in future, but we'll try our best to mitigate that using Aura and LWC. And as a developer, I am happy. I am a developer. I am happy with Lightning Web Components. So you should also be. Okay, now we'll move ahead and see. So where all LWC is supported? Yes, it is supported in Lightning Experience. It is supported in Salesforce apps, communities, app builder, community builder, managed packages, second generation managed packages, unlocked packages, unmanaged packages, change sets, metadata API, tooling API. So all these tools and experiences support LWC, which is pretty good. Then there is one more bad side, unsupported Salesforce experiences. So currently Lightning Out doesn't support it. Lightning components for Visualforce do not support LWC. Standalone apps do not support LWC. Salesforce console, navigation item APIs, workspace API, utility bar API they are not present in LWC for now. Utility bar don't support LWC directly. Sorry, URL addressable tabs, flows, snap and chats, Lightning for Gmail, EMP API, conversion toolkit API, standard action overrides, custom action, global action, list view action, chatter extension. So there is a big list of unsupported Salesforce experiences, but you have a workaround. If you want to use LWC, you can just create a Aura container, and inside that you can use your LWC component. It will be supported by all of them. So suppose you have to use a navigation item API in your console, so you can put your Aura container component, and you can use your navigation API from Aura, whereas other things, any screen or anything that you have to build, you can build in Lightning Web Components. Once those features are supported, you can remove that Aura component, container component, and directly use navigation API in Lightning Web Components. It will be pretty good. But for now, neglecting LWC is not a good thing, because the future is LWC in terms of Salesforce. Then, next slide. This is a bright slide. So in this slide, we are talking about Aura frameworks versus Lightning Web Components. So what is the difference? What is the difference? So Aura used to support one-way as well as two-way data binding. So if you remember, hash or exclamation marks we used to have, whereas here we do not have those things. And LWC only supports one-way data binding, changes to data triggered through event handlers like onChange, onKeyUp, all these kinds of event handlers. So then if you talk about value provider required, so we do not define any attribute in our component, like a markup file. All of them goes into controller file. So that's why we do not require a value provider. So if you can see here, it is directly like whatever attribute which is defined in a controller, we directly reference it in the curly braces. We do not require exclamation mark or hash or v dot or something. Then definition of attributes in component file, whereas in Lightning Web Components, definition of attributes is in the controller.js file. Aura used to support expressions in component file, like if you have to convert some, like there were a lot of text functions and addition and all, like you see here, you can add two variables and display on the screen, whereas these kinds of things are not supported in LWC. So if you want to do something like that, how you will do in LWC? So in LWC, you have an access to JavaScript getters in your controller file, which is much more powerful, flexible, and less code oriented. And one of the best, what you call, one of the best things of using JavaScript getters is you can write your test scripts which can test your controller files. Whereas if it is written in your component, this cannot be tested. What is getting displayed, what function value is returning. If it is written in your getters, it can be tested using your any of the JavaScript testing libraries. So which is good. You can now write text scripts for those. This is not a big difference. As a developer, this is easy. So we'll go ahead. So now starting with LWC. So the first thing, whenever you are starting with LWC, so the majorly if you talk about a component like front end and a controller file, JavaScript file, how to display a value or how to get a value from our front end field to a backend, not backend, JavaScript attribute, and how to send the JavaScript attribute to our display on our screen. So how we do that? So we have three types of data bindings here. So one is private attributes without rendering. So any attribute like you declare on the component, just like name. So that is without any attribute, that is private to that component. No other component can access that attribute. Okay. And if something changes, like value of that attribute changes, that will not be reflected on the screen. Only like when your component is loading, whatever value is stored in that attribute, that will be displayed on the screen. Whereas if like when your screen is already loaded, after that the value of that variable changes, it will not be reflected on the screen. How to reflect it on the screen? You have to annotate that variable or attribute with @track. So @track, what it does is it tracks your attribute. Whenever it changes, it re-renders your screen. So that's why this is private attribute with re-rendering. Okay, now those are private. If not if, it is a good practice to use modular coding to do modular coding. So when we are doing modular coding, we have to pass different parameters to different components like parent to child, child to parent and all. So how to expose our parameter to our parent component? So for that purpose, you need @API annotation. Don't worry, we'll see in the hands-on in the demo. Okay, I guess this you are clear on this. We'll move. Oh, the best part, demo. Data binding within component and data binding between components. We'll be looking at these two demos for now. Let's switch to our demo. Demo. So I guess you're aware with this interface. So this is Visual Studio Code. If you have not downloaded or if you're not using it, this is one of the Salesforce recommended IDEs, Visual Studio Code with Salesforce CLI, with Salesforce extension. You can do all the things that Salesforce wants you to do or anything that you want to do in Salesforce. This is one of the Salesforce recommended tools. So please start using this. Otherwise, if you're not using this, then also no worries. You can go to your component library. There you will find a playground for LWC. You can try out your code there as well. Okay, now moving to, let's try creating a new component. So here I selected create a Lightning Web component. In Lightning Web component, I say what I say, first component. First component, I'll store it my LWC folder. See this component is getting created. This component got created. Then, so this is my HTML. So in the first component, you can see there are 3 files created. One is your HTML file, which will store your markup. Second is your JS file, which is your controller file, which comes up by default with one import statement and one class statement. Okay, so whatever code you'll be writing will be going inside this. Any logic, any service that you'll be importing will go here before the class. Okay, and all the attributes that you want to declare will come here. Okay, and the third file is your meta file, which stores all your configuration. So see what all attributes. This is an XML file. What all attributes are here? API version of your component. Is this component exposed or not? False. So we'll say true to expose it. Then it has few more attributes like description, master label, targets. So one of the best is or important is target. I'll copy this from one of my another component which I used for another demo. Let me go here, paste it, and then I'll explain. So see targets. If you have worked on Aura, you must have used implements. So implements used to implement different interfaces wherever you want to use your component. Same way here we declare our targets. So targets tells me about, so these are my three targets for now. This component can be used for in an app page, in a record page, and in a home page. So wherever you want to use this component, you have to define the target here. So I saved my file, then I went to my JS component, JS file. So I am saying let us declare one attribute here. So I'll say first name equals Ohana. Okay, then I'll come to my template file. I say let us use one of the base component. So I have used lightning card. Inside lightning card, I want to display my attribute. So I declared it as first name. So it tells me this is my attribute. I saved it. Let me push this component to one of my scratch arcs. So now I am pushing my code to my scratch arc. Yes, the code got pushed. Now, so you can see this VSC, this instance is connected to LWC training scratch arc. Okay. Now I'll say sfdx force colon arc colon open. So what it does is it opens my arc. Okay, let me go to one of the apps. In the app, let us go on contacts. Let us go on one of the contact. Let's try to put our new component that we created and see if it is working or not. We created first component, so let me put this component here, save it. When I'll save, it will ask me to activate. I say activate. Then it will ask me which app should have permission to this lightning page. So I say assign as an org default. I say save. I say back. Yes, my component is here and it displays Ohana. So if we again come back and look at our component, what we try to do is, so we use lightning card, we reference one of the attributes first name, and this attribute was declared here. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to create one lightning input field, lightning hyphen input. We'll say label as first name, then we'll say value value will say first name. Okay, then in this first name, what we'll do is, so we have created this. Let's check whether this new field gets the value or not. So we'll deploy this source to Arc. Yes, this was deployed. We'll again go back to my Arc. Yes, I can see my new field, which says my whatever value I have put, but I cannot see this getting modified because this is not binded for now. LWC only supports one-way binding. So whatever declared in my controller is coming to my front end, but whatever binded to my input field is not going to my backend. So how to take it to my backend? I have to change, I have to use events. So I'll use on change event. Okay, on change event, I'll say call a function from my controller, which is handle change. Okay, so this will take my value to backend. Okay, so let's declare this function in our controller. So we'll say handle change, we'll take event, we'll say console.log to check whether we are getting the updated value or not. So we'll check event dot target dot value. So whenever this is fired, so event.target will give me that field from where this was fired, and from there the value attribute we want to log that and check whether we are getting whatever we are entering in a field or not. We can do one more thing. This dot first name equals, we'll say we'll copy the same value. Okay, then we'll check whether this works or not. This got deployed. Then we'll again go back. We'll see, let's inspect it. Console, when I change it, yes, I'm getting the logs. That means my method is, or a function is getting called whenever I am changing some value here. But why it is not reflecting here? Although we are changing that and it is getting reached to this function is getting called and we are getting logs. We are modifying this first name. Still we are not getting that. Why? So for that we have to use tracked attribute. How to use tracked attribute? Just put track here, one of the properties, and decorate our attribute with @track. So by using @track, it tells whenever the value of first name changes, re-render my markup. Okay, let's see if this works now. So I'm pushing my code to my org. Code got deployed. Let's refresh our screen. Oh, yes, I'm getting my logs, and even this value is changing, which is displayed. Yeah, oh, this works. So now you know how to send value to our front end. If you just want to send a value for the first time, you do not want to change in the complete life cycle of the component, don't use track. Just declare your attribute here and use it wherever in the front end you want in the markup. If you know that value will keep on changing in your component life cycle, then annotate it with track and put your track here What this will do is whenever the attribute value changes, it will re-render your markup. So it will display the new values. So you can see here, whenever I'm changing something, my new value is getting displayed. Good. Okay. Then one more thing. Now we know about at the rate track. Now we know how values go to markup. Now we know how to bring value back to our GS controller from markup by using events. So the third thing, public. So this attribute is private. This is not accessible by any of the other components. So how to make this accessible? So we'll try to do one more thing. We'll try to create one more Lightning Web component. We'll name it as first component parent. In the first component parent, oh, this got created. Perfect. In the first component parent, we'll say first we'll set the targets. In my meta file, have set the targets. I'll say this as exposed. Done with meta file. Then I'll use my first component this component into the parent component, that is first component parent. Okay, so how to use it? I'll say C hyphen first. So see, it already shows me these are the components in the lab in our package. So I say first component. Can you notice one difference? See how first component is written here, whereas how we have declared in our component the name of the component. So here we are using camel case, whereas when we work in LWC, we use it in the kebab case. So don't forget that. If you just put it in the camel case, it will not work. Good. So let's see if this works. We'll try to put this. Oh, sorry. Something wrong I have done. We'll try to deploy this component and see how it works. Yes, this got successfully created in our. We'll refresh this. We'll edit this page. After editing this page, let me see if my first component parent, yes, it is available. So I'll remove this first component and I'll put first component parent here and say save back. Yes, it is available. Child component is there in my parent container and it is working fine. Okay, now what we'll do, we'll try to pass this attribute from our parent component. See how it works. Let's see what is there in our. We'll try to do. So we'll make this. We'll remove this track and put API, as we are not going to use track. So when we annotate an attribute with API, it becomes public so that other components can set the values or get the values. And this the attribute is also supports re-rendering of the front end. Whenever value of first name will change, it will re-render on the markup. So let's see if this works. We'll try to set this. First component parent, we'll say first name equals HANA, and in our first component we'll say it will not set anything. Okay, and in my first component HTML I say Ohana. It says red. What is the issue? Let's check. So first is okay, we have put a console log. Then it says attribute name should be in lowercase. Okay, let's change it and say lowercase. Save it, deploy it to our org. Yes, this got deployed. Then something wrong. Let this load. It's not loading. Why? Yeah, it's loading slowly. I guess my internet connection is slow. Yes, now it has loaded, but it says nothing. It is working fine, but it says nothing. What is wrong? What is wrong? What is wrong? Oh, the difference is this says first name, whereas in my component it has capital N. Okay, we'll check this. We'll make it to lowercase. Save this. Move to JS file. Name it as small n. Then deploy this. You can see if this works. Yes, now it works. So the difference was any public attribute that you are defining in your component, that should be all in lowercase, no camel casing. Okay, because when we declare it as an attribute, when we are putting that component in another component, all the attribute name should be in lowercase. So that's why it should be in the lowercase. And see, whenever we are changing this, so it is updating the front end as well. So that means API supports re-rendering also. So you do not need to annotate it with at the rate track also and at the rate API also. Your API works for both the things, making an attribute public and re-rendering the front end. Okay, I guess we have covered both the topics. How we can put, how two components can talk by passing the attributes, and how data binding happens within the component. Let's go move back to our slide and see what else is there. So we have covered data binding within component. We have covered data binding between components. Moving to next topic, which is Aura expression versus JavaScript getter. So let's see. HTML accesses a property in a controller. Okay. So you can see any property, any attribute, all of them are defined in a controller, and those needs to be accessed from HTML. No attribute is defined directly in the HTML file. The property is bound to a function. Yes, the property is bound to a function. Binding through the get command, we bind it through a get command. Whenever we want to pull a value from our controller, we'll see how it works. Function is controlled. Function in controller returns a value. Yes, it returns a value which is displayed in the front end. Does not cause the components to re-render. Okay, yes, it does not cause a component to re-render. If you want to re-render, you have to annotate it with track annotation. Okay, let's see how this works. Let's go back to our Visual Studio Code, our ID. So what I want to say is, okay, this parameter I'm getting from my parent, and I have an input field which can change that, but I don't want to directly display my first name on my component. How I want is, it should something say like, hey, first name, then exclamation. Okay, how to do this? how to do this. For this, what you can do is, let's name it as greeting. Okay, greeting will say get greeting. We have defined a getter method. We have annotated with the track, and we are returning a value. What to return? In return, I want to say hey plus this dot first name plus single quote and exclamation. Command S, command P. See if this works. It says some error. Okay, let's see what's the error. At the right track can only be defined to a class attribute. Yes, it's a class attribute. Let's see, I guess I have written something wrong. Let's go to one of my previous component and see what I have done. Yes, so I have done something wrong, which is my attribute should be defined. Oh. Let's check this first component. In this first component, I say this command S. I just set my getter and deploy. Oh, it got deployed. Perfect. It doesn't need track. We'll remove track. So we have defined our getter setter, only getter, not setter. Okay, this is, I'll name it as get greeting. I'll call this function from my component, command S, then. So whenever the value of first name will change, we do not need track because already we have this API. Whenever my value for first name will change, it will automatically call it will automatically render my front end, and when my front end will be re-rendered, it will call my getter. So I do not need to specifically track this because we already have a parameter which is dependent on this. So let's deploy this and see if it is working. Let's refresh this. Yes, it works. It says Andy. I put my name and it says hey Andy. Perfect. Andy, yeah. Something wrong. Yes, it works. So you can see how expression work here. You do not need to put a complete expression here. You cannot test that. If you are referencing that from a getter method from your controller, so how this helps is all the logic goes in your controller file, and then you can write, like using jest or any testing library, JavaScript testing library, you can test these, how it behaves. So it will be easy for your test as well. Like you can test your components as well. I think this helps. Let's again go back to our slide. Okay, we are good with this. Then moving ahead. So we had a JavaScript getter demo. I hope you understood it, how it works, why it is useful. Going ahead, thank you. So in this session, we only talked about why LWC, how data binding works, and why it is important, because it uses web component standards all the libraries which are using web component standards. So any developer which is coming, front-end developer which is coming in, which has worked on any web component standards library, they can easily quickly pick up LWC. Thank you. So in our next session, we'll be talking about templates, how to iterate, how to conditionally render our templates and all. So yes, there are a lot of sessions planned. We'll be talking about how to use CSS in this, how to use slots, how to use event bubbling, lifecycle and all. So lot is there to come in. So yeah, hope this you like this session. Thank you. Thanks a lot. If this was helpful, don't forget to subscribe, like or share, whatever. Thank you. Thanks a lot.